Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is a conversation in jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Our guest today is one of the first ladies of the jazz bass. She is a multi-instrumentalist and composer. She also co-leads the all-women powerhouse, the 3D Jazz Trio. Please welcome the lovely Miss Amy Shook. We ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology101. That's $Jazzology101. Enjoy the video. Hi, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is a conversation in jazz. Today, we have one of the first ladies of the jazz bass. She is one of the most in-demand acoustic bassists in the Mid-Atlantic. Not only is she a dynamic performing and recording artist, but she is also a multi-instrumentalist and an accomplished composer. She co-leads the all-woman powerhouse trio, the 3D Jazz Trio. That stands for the Three Divas. Please welcome my sister from another mister, the lovely, the wonderful, the one and only Miss Amy Shook.
My brother from another mother.
Yeah, how you doing, Amy?
I'm so glad to be here with you today,
I'm glad for you to join us here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so how's it going?
It's going great, yeah.
I think the last thing we did together was with Scott Silver.
Yes.
And you were, I watched you, you were like directing and
I was
doing the cameras.
Yeah,
And
I was trying to not forget anything, man. You know?
Oh, you did a great job. That was a great experience.
It was a great experience.
Yeah, so.
We just, it's about to come out. You know?
Really?
So
Good,
be ready.
good. Yeah, good.
It sounds beautiful. It looks beautiful. It's, you know.
The whole
I'm proud to be a
production
part
was
of it.
just fabulous.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's exciting, especially considering the past year and a half or so. It's like, oh man, something really magical, you know.
And it was refreshing.
Yeah.
For us to get back together, you know,
gosh,
and that's
wasn't
what
it?
so.
Yeah.
So but I think that's the last thing we did together.
I think so.
I don't know when we met. Do you remember?
It's been a long time because
it's been a
I
minute.
remember meeting you a long time ago,
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, as it always happens, you know, time slips by and it slips through your fingers. You're like, wait a minute, how long has it been now? When did I see you last?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
So I don't know. We've always known each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a conversation in jazz, right?
All right. Okay.
And we get to know some things about you. Maybe we didn't know.
You're talking about?
How did you become Amy Shook, the Amy Shook? We want to learn those things.
Oh, okay.
So my first question is, who is Amy Shook?
Who isn't Amy Shook? Who isn't? I don't know. Wow. You know, what was the question? Line?
Who is Amy Shook?
Who is Amy Shook? Well, I mean, you know, I'm someone who wants to just do her best and love people and make art.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, you do a great job.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think I appreciate that. Yeah.
Where are you from?
Are you ready for this?
Come on.
This is a geography lesson.
Okay.
I'm from Idaho.
You're
Anybody
from-
know where Idaho is from?
You from Idaho?
I'm from Idaho.
Oh, wow.
Do you know where that is?
I heard of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been there.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a lot of people think that it's Midwest. They get it confused with Iowa or Ohio, you know, like the other vowel states, right? But it's actually Pacific Northwest. So if you're looking at the map and you know where Washington State is, and you know where Oregon is,
Yep.
Idaho borders both of those states to their eastern borders. So
What was it like coming up in Idaho?
It was, well, you know, I mean, you think about where you come up, where you grow up, and then where you land, you know, and the East Coast is so very different than than Idaho.
Really?
You know, like all of Idaho. Idaho
Really?
is, it's not.
Is it slower?
It's very slow. It's not very densely populated. You know, I mean, and there's a lot of within the state itself. If you're a person who likes being outdoors, you have a lot of climate variety. So, like where
wow.
I grew up in Boise, Idaho is where I'm from.
That's bougie?
Boise.
Boise.
Yeah.
I thought you said bougie.
It's bougie. Not quite. It's very fancy. It's fancy in French. No,
yes.
no, it's in the southern part of the state, and it kind of borders on what would be considered steppe desert. So,
Okay.
you know, you don't have to go very far south of the city, and you are in the desert, basically.
Really?
Not
Wow.
not like rolling sand dunes desert, but yeah, steppe desert. So it's very dry. But then you just go a little bit further north and you're in the mountains, and there's,
Oh, wow.
you know, beautiful pine trees and lakes and so forth. And then
Okay.
you go further north, up closer to where I went to school, and there's this little pocket called the Palouse region. And it is a climate that they grow grains there. You have
Wow.
peas and lentils and grains and things like that, like they would in the Midwest. But there's just this little pocket where, you know, this. So you can, if you want, you know, you can
So
get all kinds
did
of.
you have fun growing up?
Yes, of course I had fun growing up. I was constantly goofing off. Yeah, absolutely.
You really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You know.
Do you come from a musical family?
Well, not really. I mean, my mom sang. My grandma Amy played some piano. I mean, I remember her, you know, the piano always being in her house, and she, you know, would play, but it wasn't something that, and nobody went out and did it, you know, other than, you know, my mom would sing in church, my aunt would sing, you know, in church, and I think she actually had gone to college playing the cello, but she didn't
Okay.
keep up with that, you know, and I never knew her as a cellist.
You have any siblings?
No,
You the only child?
it's just me. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What is it like being the only child?
Fabulous. You don't have to
Really?
share nothing, man.
So are you spoiled?
Well, you know, okay, maybe a little bit. But the thing is, though, when I think of spoiled, I think of someone who has not been disciplined. And
Okay.
believe me, I was disciplined.
Gotcha.
You know, if I got out of line,
Yeah.
I was disciplined.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So you can't spoil with love. And my parents were both. I mean, I couldn't. If I would want them as parents again if I were
Yeah.
coming back in another
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah.
You know.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of music did you listen to coming up?
Well, my mom, I mean, this is the thing. My mom always loved music, and she was always listening to music. There was always music on, and she had her favorites. One was Barbra Streisand, so
Wow.
I know the
Yeah.
Barbra Streisand canon,
Yeah, yeah.
which is, pretty great. So many great songs, and of course, her voice is iconic. The other one is Johnny Mathis.
Wow.
I know the Johnny Mathis, So those were two that I heard a lot growing up. And then, as I started, listening to the radio when I got my first boombox and everything, cassette player, and so cool. Anybody know what cassettes are? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so I remember listening to the radio, and I loved Michael Jackson. Loved Michael Jackson. I mean,
yeah. We all did.
yeah. If you don't love Michael Jackson, we can't be friends. Anyway, so so I remember having my little Walkman with the headphones that had the bright orange foam.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember listening to that when we go on our walks. So Michael Jackson, but I tell you, one of my most favorites, and still to this day, is Paul Simon.
Wow.
I love Paul Simon. I love his songwriting. I love his lyricism.
So you was listening to a lot of pop.
Yeah,
Okay.
man, yeah, and of course a variety. I did hear some big band stuff. My dad always liked that, but yeah, I was listening to the radio, and
Okay.
there wasn't a whole lot of diversity in terms
So
of that.
how'd you start get acclimated to music? Like, was the bass did you start out with the bass, or what?
No, I did not. I started on violin.
You started out with violin.
I did. I started with
Oh, wow.
violin, and I actually went to college. I have a master's in violin performance.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's a crazy town, isn't it?
Wow.
Anyway, but
So you started playing violin,
yeah,
and that was your main axe?
that was my main axe. Yeah. So going back to hearing Barbra Streisand and Johnny Mathis, I remember asking my mom because, on all those recordings there would be big orchestrations, big, big band or rhythm section or whatever, but there'd always be like strings, like an orchestra behind them. And I said to my mom one time when I was really young, maybe 6 or 7, I'm like, what's that really high pitched, like it's a long sound, it ended up being the violins, right? It was the violins that I was hearing this, really, that sparkly thing that happens. Anyway, so I wasn't interested in learning the violin or anything. I just wanted to know what it was because I was always, always in a state of inquiry. I still am. I've got questions about everything.
Yeah.
We'll get to some for you.
Good.
Soon. Yeah. We're going to switch this interview around. But the violin, I ended up starting playing the violin because my best girlfriend in elementary school was like, oh, we're coming up onto 4th grade and they're going to let us play in the orchestra. You want to play violin with me? And I was like, okay, I'll do it. That's not what, we can do this together, And so we did it, and me and all my friends, we joined an orchestra, 4th grade, and I was the only one that kept up in the long run, and I was the one that was like, well, I could take it or leave it. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. Yeah. But it was something that was, I hate to say talented because it's, you always, you work for something that matters to you, but it did come easy. I did have.
That was one of my questions I want to ask you. Did music come easy for you?
It did. I had an affinity for it.
Wow.
And the thing is, I think that talent a lot is based upon an affinity for something. If you are really interested, then you will pay attention to it. And a lot of how we learn something really deeply is how much are we willing to commit to focus. Yeah.
So it compelled you when you first started playing.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is fun. This is easy. What? And my friend would be like, and I'm like, no, just do this. And she was not getting it. She was an amazing drawer, though. She was in the gifted and talented program. Yeah. In the school, I was not.
So did you start at did you get formal lessons?
I did. The first year, I just played in the orchestra in the school, and then my folks realized, maybe this is a thing for her. This is something, And so when I started in 5th grade, I started taking private lessons.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really start getting good, right?
Well, I guess, I always think, I'm like, man, I always feel like I didn't work hard enough. You know what I mean? Like
you want more struggle?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, and even still now, I feel like, man, boy, I'm such an imposter. Sometimes, because it's just like, well, I didn't have to really struggle at it, which I'm also thankful for too. Because if I had, I probably wouldn't have done it because I would have been like, yeah, let's change gears. Let's go another direction.
So do you have perfect pitch?
Oh, no. But I have really good relative pitch.
Yeah. So did reading come easy for you as well?
It did. And I think partly that's due to just being very young when I was starting to read, because...
I started out just reading.
Yeah, reading.
And it's just like anything else. You do it.
Right.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is a language, right? So you have to sound it out. It's just that you're really multitasking when you're trying to, coordinate this and this and and good posture. I'm not having good posture.
So
right
did
now.
you get special attention because you were? I'm assuming you were one of like the top kids music in the band or in the orchestra.
Yeah. I was usually the concertmaster of the orchestra.
Yeah.
Usually. When I got into, I guess it was high school, and there was, we had like the honor orchestra, junior high honor orchestra, elementary honor orchestra, elementary level, junior high, level, and then the youth symphony, which was high school level. And in the youth symphony, that stepped up a little bit more because it was like everyone from the city, could audition and be in it.
Yeah.
And so there was a fair bit of competition. And I think that, because you could always do a thing where you did a chair challenge. Like if you wanted to,
I remember
you
those
remember
days,
that,
yeah.
right?
I lost my chair. I would cry.
You would cry, and then you would be like, challenge!
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up your, throw it down, challenge tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I know that, gosh, all those
days,
teachers, they must have just been like, oh, here they go again. They want to challenge each other again, which is not bad. But.
Yeah, I wonder if the kids today have that type of drive. I don't.
You would know. You see them
I don't. Well, I guess some do.
Yeah.
It was. I don't know. We were in a different time too.
Yeah.
Pre all this internet and all this stuff. So
thank God.
Yeah.
Man, sometimes, it's an amazing tool, and sometimes I lament the fact that I did not have access to YouTube when I was young. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that I wasn't faced with all of the other things that the kids are with bullying and
so much,
and also seeing, because with social media, you know how it is. People, they don't typically air out the garbage. Sometimes people do, because some people just they live on social media. They say everything. But these kids are constantly comparing themselves, and it breaks my heart for them.
Mm-hmm. They'll make it. They'll find their way.
They'll have to. Or they will or they won't. Yeah.
Before I ask you that question, I want to ask you, when did you know that music was something that you were going to, like, this is what I want to do?
Oh, I always knew it. I knew, and it's interesting too, because I don't want to speak badly of anyone, but I had a teacher that I remember, I was always the top in the studio. I was the top in the orchestra, and I was like, well, this comes easy to me. I really enjoy it. This is what I'm going to do. Now, okay, remember, I'm like 11, 12 maybe. And someone, affiliated with this teacher that I was studying with asked me, and this person was also a musician, asked me, well, what do you want to do? What are you going to major in college? I'm 11. Okay. So well, I don't know, I'm 11. So, but the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, I'm going to study violin, and I'm going to be in a symphony. And, and this person said, well, you can't do that.
Wow.
And at 11, I didn't understand it the way that it was said, because what it was said was mostly like from their position, and they were a great musician, but knowing the competition being as steep as it is, it's like, well, it was more like, you good luck with that, instead of, what I took it as was I personally was never going to be good enough,
Wow.
So for a number of years, I struggled with this love of music and wanting to do it, and this feeling that I was never going to be good enough,
And that's deep. That's deep that somebody's words can have that type of impact on somebody at it.
Yeah, well, and so, talking about teachers, I respect teaching and teachers so much.
Yeah.
I know that I could never do like what you do, being in the trenches with them, because I would always be afraid of being the person that, in just a moment of, saying something that could just completely derail the next Mozart, or whatever. And I'm just like, I know, But so for a long time, I
think if you're teaching, you probably would have to be more worried about getting derailed.
Well, and I've seen that too, because I've done some of these outreach programs coming into the schools, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my God, this is
yeah.
really intense. Yeah,
Yeah,
man, how do
but-
you do this? We need to like start tipping you guys, tip jar, for you teachers, man. It's amazing what you do.
I learned, when you're in it, you learn how to, you figure it out.
Well, it's like jazz. You improvise,
Yeah.
right? You're
Oh, yeah.
constantly improvising. Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so to get back just real quickly, in addition to music, I had and still do have a very passionate love of science and all things science. I do love me some science.
Really?
And I like to read sciencey things and watch sciencey videos.
Yeah.
I know I'm wearing glasses. Even though they're sparkly, they are
Yeah.
nerd alert here. Anyway, so and I always wanted to be an astronaut.
Wow.
Yeah, I did. I always wanted to be an astronaut, and we can talk about it later. But
I'm not going to derail your ambitions. For
No,
being
well-
astronaut. You can go. You can do it.
thank you. Well, now, especially because in the private sector they have space flight, so
Yeah.
I'm saving up now. I got to get me some more gigs.
Would you? would you go out of? Would you?
Absolutely.
Because they just did a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. I wouldn't. And it's funny because I would never jump out of an airplane. I wouldn't do anything like that.
yeah,
But you put me on a rocket,
Yeah.
let's go. I'm going to go to space. Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, definitely. I would go to the space station, man.
Yeah. That would
Anybody want to finance that? My trip to
There
the
you go,
space station?
yeah.
Okay. I'll play bass in space.
I think I would do it too. Because that's
Yeah.
like, that was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what, though? There's a great tune, and I keep forgetting about it, and now you've reminded me. I'm going to go home and learn it today. A tune by Paquito de Rivera called Basstronaut. B-A-S-S.
Basstronaut?
Yeah, and it's a bass feature.
Oh, wow.
It's a
Okay.
blues. And I'm like, I got
That's
it.
your theme song. That
That's
would be your
my,
theme
it's
song, yeah.
my theme song. He didn't even know he wrote it for me. Anyway, yeah.
Wow. So how'd you move? Why are you going to say, you still play violin, I'm sure.
I
assuming.
do, yeah.
But is your main act still violin, or is your main act now bass?
It's bass.
Okay.
You know that.
Yeah. I know.
You know
But how did the bass take the place of the violin?
Well, it didn't. Well, I guess maybe in a way it did take the place in terms of being the front runner. Okay, so when I was in junior high, I was playing violin in the orchestra and I was singing in the jazz choir.
Okay. So you sing as well.
I do. I haven't got it together where I can sing and play the bass. I know that that's a thing, and I'm just going to confess I'm just lazy. I'm just lazy, and I do need to commit some time to it because I really would like to be able to just like throw that down and make people go, what?
Yeah.
It's always about the shock value. If I can do it once and shock you, then my life is complete.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not something I want to pursue. I mean, there's so many great singers, bass players, and just.
But you could do a recording and sing and stuff like that, right?
I could do it. I just we'll talk about
see.
it. We'll think about that.
Okay.
And now I'm going to think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I was singing in a jazz choir, and every year there was the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, which was held at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho.
Okay.
Right? Massive jazz festival in the middle of northern Idaho in the winter.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But because of that, this is kind of where the track kind of, angled off and became a parallel reality. So they had, they had like junior high day, high school day, college day, and like competitions where groups would come and perform and be adjudicated and stuff. And then in the evening, you would go and you would listen to icons, like jazz icons.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm, at that point, I think I was 13, and I didn't have any idea who I was listening to. No idea. No clue whatsoever. I just thought, oh, well, we're in, at the competition, in my 13-year-old brain. Anyway, so jazz choir, we went up to do the competition, whatever, and then I remember that night going to the big concert, which was held in the Kibbe Dome, which is the football stadium, you know, and it's an enclosed stadium there, but it was the concert venue for this. And it was always, I just remember how big it seemed and how exciting it seemed. And there was this stage down there, and there was like the big teleprompters on either side so they could zoom into, you know, we were sitting way up in the bleachers, way in the back. And so then you could see who was doing whatever. But I saw Carmen McRae.
Wow.
I saw Dizzy Gillespie. I saw Lionel Hampton.
Wow.
I saw, I think Stan Getz.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean.
And you had no idea who these people were?
No. I really enjoyed it, though.
Yeah,
The energy was amazing, you know, and Lionel Hampton I was like, man, that guy is funny. Because he's like, when he's playing, he's going, you know, I mean, you know, he's, you know, like all in it. But, you know, I'm like, wow, that, you know, and it was very exciting. And, you know, and there was, I can't remember everyone, and I need to see if I can go find an old program somewhere. I know I kept probably every single one I ever got because in later years, when I went to school there, I was constantly getting autographs. So I have autographs of you know, all these folks, which is really cool. I need to get them framed or something. But so I saw out of all of those, but the one group that was the galvanizing moment was the Ray Brown Trio.
Ray Brown?
Yeah. Ray Brown, Gene Harris, Jeff Hamilton. And at the time, I think they hadn't yet recorded the album, but they were, you know, how all those really fantastic bands do. They tour and they play the material and then they record it, you know. And he, with his trio, almost, especially past a certain era, everything was a live recording, which are my favorite recordings too. But I remember they were playing basically all the music off of, again, one of my very favorite albums ever now, you know, because it was the one, the Ray Brown Trio, Live at the Loa, Summer Wind is the name. And it's on the cover, it's like got a kind of a chalk drawing of curtains blowing in a window, right? And one of the tunes on there was Ray Brown's The Real Blues.
The Real Blues?
The Real Blues.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was him just doing this solo, and he hit the low E string, and then he was doing this thing where he was like sliding these other notes. Of course, now I know exactly what it is, but I remember as a kid going, "Wait, what is he doing? How is he doing that?" You know? Yeah. And then of course, eventually, I ended up discovering, that album and all that music that I heard is on this album.
Wow.
But so you know, listening to that. But the thing I remember just so vividly was like, okay, I saw and heard the Lionel Hampton Big Band. You know, I mean, talk about a wall of swing and sound. Yeah, I mean, you know, hit you in the chest and, you know, pin you down in the best way. Yeah. It was the same with that trio. I'm like, there's only three people, and there's this wall of sound coming at you that is so grooving.
And this is live.
Yeah. And like, you know, like Ray Brown's bass, it's like he lays it down and you can still feel the time coming off of it, you know, like that, like, what is that? You know, and I just remember thinking, I want that.
Wow.
I don't know what it is, but I want that, you know, yeah.
So that started your curiosity.
Yes.
For the we call it the bass fiddle.
The bass, yeah. So, so next year, I'm in 9th grade. You know, in Idaho, it's like instead of middle school, it was junior high, so 7th through 9th grade, and then high school was 10th through 12th. So I was, you know, 9th grade and junior high, singing in the jazz choir again, and the kid who had been playing bass in the combo that accompanied the choir had gone off to high school. So there was a vacancy in the combo that accompanied the choir. Wow. And the choir director, he just kind of put it to all of us, well, you know, we need a bass player. Does anyone want to volunteer?
Wow.
And I'll admit, I did have a crush on the choir teacher. But I was like, pick me, because I wanted to play. I'm like, okay, well, you know, I'll play this bass, right? You know, and so that was it. You know, I
that's heavy.
Yeah.
So that moment is the moment while we know, you know, Amy shook as the bass player.
Yeah, that's it. That was that
moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is the importance of moments in life.
That's right. There are.
That
yeah.
moment was,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So, so you used the school bass, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Did you start getting bass lessons?
No. I'm completely self-taught on bass.
You say you're complete, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so, not that violin is the same as bass, because it's not. I'm not even going to even pretend that.
Yeah.
But conceptually, there's things that do translate,
Okay.
like good left-hand technique, with how you approach the strings. I mean,
Okay.
it's different because on violin, it's more of this position, whereas on bass it's this, and but there's concepts of, you still need to keep your wrist
What
straight.
about reading the notes? I know you got bass clef now, so you had to.
I had to learn how to read bass clef, but it was one of those things that it was easy.
Okay.
And it was partly because I was able to associate, if I were sitting down at the piano and reading treble and bass clef, it's a different scenario than me just associating treble clef with violin and bass clef with bass. Like, this is where these notes are,
Wow, that's
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I'm from Philly, right?
Yeah.
So I went to high school with Christian McBride
Yeah.
and Joey Diffie. But I also was in high school. We didn't go to the same high school with Dwayne Burnell, but we came up. We were
Yeah.
around the same time.
Yeah.
Dwayne Burnell was a violin player.
See?
See, he started out,
See?
and he picked up the bass when he went to Berkeley.
Wow.
And the next thing I know, because we used to be playing, and he would play his little violin, jazz on violin,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Ray Nance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when he, I guess when he graduated high school and went to Berkeley, he picked somewhere along the line. And it was like off to the races.
Yeah, off to the races.
So that's interesting. So
Well, you know what's really cool? Okay, where I grew up in Boise, they actually, the music program in the public schools was really incredible and had tremendous support from the community and from the top down, from the,
wow.
So, to say that there was a full orchestra in elementary school, that's true.
Wow.
Where do you see that now?
Yes,
I don't know, which is sad. But, and so when you got into junior high honor orchestra, it was like a symphony with the woodwinds and everything. And we were playing that literature.
Yeah.
Maybe not very well,
Yeah,
but we were
but
we were doing it where we were being exposed to it. So, they had this really cool program in Boise where it was called the Swap Strings program. So if you were in the orchestra, and they had swap band too, so if you wanted to do this, if you were in the orchestra and you played, like I played violin, during the summer for, I think it was like over a course of a month, you could be in an orchestra with your other colleagues, your other fellow students, but you all traded instruments and were playing, so the bass players could play violin,
wow.
and all the way around. So one summer I did that on bass, which was like, I remember the gal who was conducting the orchestra, because I was like, well, how do I find the note? And she's like, I don't know, here's a book. I'm like, okay, I just thought, all right, well, that's how it's going to be. So I really have to figure this out, and so I
Figured it out.
I figured it out, and then the following summer I did the same thing on cello, so I did it, and I'm terrible. I'm really not very good at cello.
That's what I'm saying. I was going to say you played viola, cello, electric bass. I heard you.
Yeah. Oh, you heard that.
Yeah, I heard you. I said, "Wow."
Yeah.
So now, did you learn all these things simultaneously, or did you just add it? Was just like added to the to the pot?
It just things just would happen. Like, I didn't get into the viola until I was in college.
Okay.
And like I said, with cello, I had only done it just that, I had done the swap strings thing. I was like, well, that's fun, but I was stuck with the bass. So I continued playing violin in the regular orchestra, and then I played bass in the jazz combo with the choir. And then it went like that when I got to high school too.
So are they all similar? The string instruments fairly similar?
Well, I mean, they're similar, like I was saying, in concept, like violin and viola, it's this, cello and bass, it's this,
Yeah.
but there's some differences. For example, the strings are all different. So
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And like with viola, there's the alto clef, which still for a long time I was like, I can't read alto clef. So I would just be like, well, if I put it in treble clef or bass clef, I could read, so sometimes if I was having to do some viola things on the fly, I'd be like, well, let's just put it in bass clef because I'll be able to read that because I know what those notes are. Whereas with the alto clef, I was like, okay, there's C, countdown. Okay, oh, that's the A. Oh, got it, So, yeah.
So do you also play guitar?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I could say I play at guitar, but no.
Yeah.
No. No. I wish I did, man. I do, because it's super cool.
So let's talk about the acoustic bass.
Okay. I'll do it.
Yeah. So I asked Keita, is it fun to play?
Oh my God! If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it.
So what's fun about playing the bass?
Well,
the acoustic bass.
Okay. Well, for one thing, I'm a person that I like to be participating.
Gotcha.
In whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's doing coloring, or if it's like gardening, or if it's helping a friend do something like with Scott and his project. I love participating. With the bass, I get to play the entire time. Yeah. You horn players, you get up, you do your thing, it's nice, but then you got to move off. And I'm like, I'm still here, I'm thumping away. So I love it for that reason, that it's like, which conversely, when you're at a jam session, maybe it's kind of like, oh, here comes another horn player, but it's still, I get to participate the whole time. I get to be in it the whole time. And I often say I always have the best seat in the house.
Wow.
Because I'm in the middle usually between piano and drums, horn player, and I get to observe everything as it's happening in the moment. And I really just love the experience of the interplay, especially when you have master drummer, master piano, and they're cross-comping, the conversation that's happening behind the soloist. I love that so much. But man, I love the groove.
So what would you say is the primary function of the bass?
Oh, the groove.
The groove.
The rhythm.
Okay.
The groove. And then the notes.
Okay. No choices.
It's a close second, but it's still going to be groove, because that's with bass. The cool thing about bass is that you pretty much find that sonority in all genres of music. You have to have that foundation. With jazz specifically, you have not just the foundation of that sonic note, but you have the foundation of the rhythm. There's a reason the bass player's set up between the drums and the piano. It's like I'm playing the foundation of that quarter note here with the drums and the ride cymbal, and then I'm supporting the upper structure of the chords coming from the piano. So I'm like, I'm that bridge, or the bass is the bridge. I'm not the bridge.
So when you're looking at a song, chord progressions to a particular song, do you have a particular way of how you approach walking the chord changes, or are you on automatic pilot?
Oh, well, maybe some of both, because it's one thing if I'm just reading something for the first time versus something that I know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because obviously the more internalized you have something, the less distraction you have. So there comes the autopilot. Even though it's not autopilot, it's very much participating in the moment.
Yeah, because the fact that you are always playing and you're playing a chorus, it's like you want to kind of be creative and not play basically the same thing you played the last. Yeah. All that goes into it, right?
Oh yeah, it's like every time you come around to the top again, it's like, okay, well, sometimes it depends on what the gig is, but sometimes I'll have a thing where I'll be like, okay, instead of landing on the root every time, the root is obviously going to be the defining factor, but how can I tonicize this root without playing it first?
Wow.
Right. And so there's exercises that you can do there, where, for example, like B flat. Let's say you got
Yeah.
a B flat 7 chord. You know, I might go ahead and, you know, instead of playing B flat on the downbeat, I might play a D natural, which is the third, which is the it tonicizes that. But then, and not too long, get to that B flat, so it sounds like I'm still tonicizing B flat and not turning it into D minor.
Okay.
You know, I don't always
So
have
is
to
the
play
goal when you walk in to create a line that actually outlines the structure of the harmonic progression?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I like to think of it as kind of, you know, you're creeping through the changes, right? You're not just outlining, you know, like triads and things like that, and you're not just straight up playing scales. However, I should say that is the backbone of all walking bass lines are scales, you know, and then bop scales, you know, you add the extra
Okay,
color note in
okay.
there, you know, because that's what's defining. You know, you have a chord symbol. And, you know, a lot of folks will think, oh, like C major, okay, C, E, G, and if it's, you know, dominant C, E, G, B flat, you know, very root position oriented, and you could add the upper structure. But really, when you bring that upper structure all the way back down in, it's still C, D, E, F, G, A,
Gotcha,
B.
gotcha.
It's a scale, it's
Yeah.
just been spread out, right?
Yeah.
So chord changes are just shorthand for scales.
Can you tell if a bass player is not really playing the changes?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes. And sometimes I can tell when I'm not, too. And I'm like, I just rented these hands. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm breaking them in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, because that's the foundation, you know.
Yeah.
And when the foundation of your building isn't correct,
Yeah.
the walls and the roof are going to be
Gotcha.
pretty shaky, you know. And that goes both, you know, again, with harmonic, but rhythmically, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of fingers, let's talk about calluses.
Okay. I got some. Yep.
Now, bass players have to develop calluses, right? Is that
Yes,
a
we do. Yes.
Yeah. So, is there a painful process?
Yes.
Really?
It's terrible and it's messy, and you need lots of Band-Aids.
Really?
Okay, so let's maybe I could say this. Okay, I went to jazz camp when I was in high school, right? And the reason I went to jazz camp was because it was cheaper than going to space camp. So I didn't get to space camp, I got to jazz camp, which is totally great and totally fine that I did. So I ended up at Frank DeMiro's jazz camp in, you know, near Seattle, Washington. And for those who don't know, that's like a vocalist, a jazz vocal, you know, vocal jazz camp. But I went as a bass player to be in the rhythm section. Of course, I think I'm that particular year, I was either one or two. There was only a couple of us, and I was the more accomplished or more knowledgeable. So, and the one that could read. So I was being put through the paces every day.
Wow.
So, you know, what I had never been in a position like that where I was having to play so
Yeah.
much, you know. And you know, as a kid, you know, playing on the jungle gym and monkey bars, you know,
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
you would
yeah,
develop the
yeah,
calluses
yeah,
right
yeah.
there. And it's just because you were just
Yeah,
doing that,
yeah.
you know, and eventually it became solid as a rock
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't hurt. Well, that's what was happening with every single finger, and as well as the plucking fingers. And I had blisters that went, you know, from the tip of the finger to where the bend of the first
Ooh.
knuckle is. And so, and what would happen is they would swell up and, you know, fill with, you know, fluid and blood and look terrible. And then what would happen is eventually they would burst. I mean, this is really kind of gross, but I mean, it would burst, and then, you know, you'd be bleeding and it would be a sticky, horrible mess.
Yeah.
And you just had to play through it because there was no shortcut to
And
developing
you had to
this
play
talent.
through it?
Yeah, you just
Was
had
it?
to play.
I know it was painful.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, you know what would happen? And I think it's another, you know, just the way our bodies are and this amazing biology, this mechanism of pain management that happens, you know, where it's like, okay, this is something repetitive that I'm doing, and every single note I'm playing is excruciating, but after a while, it kind of goes numb.
Okay.
you know. And then you're like, okay, I can handle this, you know, and it goes numb for a while, and then you come to the end of the song, and then there's the next song that's choosing, and it all starts over
God.
again, you know. So it's like, oh, here we go again. Oh my
Wow.
God, you know. And then, okay, so this is actually kind of funny.
Cool.
So, you know, of course, the teachers were all very, you know, sympathetic because they knew that I was being put through it.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
knew it, and so I had Band-Aids on all these fingers. Yeah, I had Band-Aids. But the thing is, on this hand, they would kind of stay in place, but it's really weird having that thing between you and the thing that's making noise.
Yeah.
You know, it's a weird thing. But on this hand, you'd be plucking away, and after a certain point, you know, the Band-Aid, the sticky would just like let loose, and it was like shooting an arrow. nasty Band-Aid would go like, it was like I had shot it from an arrow across the room at somebody. It's so terrible. I'd be like, oh there
man,
it goes
that's
again. Oh, I
funny.
feel so bad. Oh my God, that's so gross. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah, but yeah, so now, yeah, man, I have oven mitts for hands.
So
That's no
now,
joke.
once you get the blisters, you good, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you get the blisters, and then it just thickens and thickens and thickens and turns into these calluses that are, you know, I mean,
And you got to keep playing so they don't go. The calluses
yeah,
don't go.
they don't
away.
go away, and I don't really use hand moisturizer either for
Yeah,
that reason,
okay,
you know.
okay.
But it's crazy town. You know how like all our phones now with the biometric thing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
your
Wow.
fingerprint. I have to like go through and find a fingerprint that is
Wow.
entire to use to unlock things. So I'm
Wow,
not
that
using
is-
the typical.
See, there's
you know,
things that we don't know
Yeah.
that y'all got to go through.
I know. It's like, I don't even have a fingerprint anymore. You
Wow,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny.
That's dedication.
You know. It's so worth it though. You know.
Yeah.
So worth it.
And not only is that dedication dealing with those calluses, but you know, to play a upright bass, you got to carry those big bulky instruments to the gig
Yeah.
with an amp.
Yeah, man.
I'm like
Upstairs.
up.
You know,
up-
there's no elevator here.
Yeah, it's
you got to
like-
carry upstairs.
It's like, do you ever get used to that?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember early on just being like, "Oh man, this is hard."
Yeah.
You know, but just like anything, by doing something repetitively,
Yeah.
you gain strength.
Yeah,
You know,
gotcha.
and I'm short, and I'm also pretty stocky.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have advantages over other
Okay.
folks that are maybe taller and
Yeah.
you know they're strong, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, being more short
Yeah,
and
yeah,
compact,
yeah,
it makes it easier to, you know, your center of gravity is in such a way that
yeah.
going up the stairs backwards with the bass is
Yeah.
not so bad because you don't have very far to fall. Yeah, it's short. So, you know, you can go back, oh, I can just sit down. Okay, get back up, you know, but
Did you ever have one of those bass coffins?
yeah, I do. I have
Remember
one.
you have one?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. They don't even. Do they still use those?
Well, you know, I imagine that
yeah.
because flying with a bass now is really...
They don't do that a lot, like
It's-
they did back in the day, do they?
No, because it's, I mean, especially now since,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
9/11, you know, it disrupted travel in so many ways, but especially for those of us with
Yeah,
large
yeah.
instruments, you know, and it a little bit ended up being solved with that, with being able to do cargo shipping, like Southwest Cargo. You know,
yeah.
I went and got a shipper's number, you know, so, which is actually the way to go because they handle it properly versus the baggage carriers that,
Gotcha.
you know, don't. And just, you're talking about that coffin. I had this experience when my husband and I were working on cruise ships together, and we were flying to Finland because we were going to be on a new ship that was coming out. And there were, you know, they keep cutting musicians back. Yeah, it's terrible but at this particular time we had like a full 10-piece band and then a jazz trio and like all, you know, a lot of great musicians on a ship. And there were 3 of us that were acoustic bass players. And I remember we got to Finland and they started rolling out all the bass cases in the oversized luggage thing. And the entire front of where the bridge would be on the bass was completely smashed in on my case.
Wow.
Completely smashed, like the fiberglass, everything smashed in, and I was just like, you know, like your heart stops. Like, what am I going to see when I open this case? You know, am I going to see the bridge through is it going to just be kindling? You know?
Wow.
I open up the case and my bass is completely fine. So this is like kudos to David Gage flight cases. Anyone wants to know.
Wow.
Yeah, but the other two guys, they had off-brand cases, and one of those other basses, the neck was broke off, but not just like popped off the instrument. Okay, you know, the neck is a solid piece of maple, you know, and it shape and it has this part, you know, this horn part that attaches to the bass. The part that was broken was, you know, right where it bends, like through one of the thickest parts of that piece of wood, it was split. I mean, so, you know, like they must have just pushed my bass out onto the tarmac, onto its top for it to crush like that, you know. And so you just, you know, cargo, Southwest Cargo.
Wow.
But
and then basses are expensive, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and that's why, you know, you see that crushed in and you're like,
what are they running at?
Well, you know, sky's the limit.
And it depends on the wood and all that?
Well, not so, well, yes, because there's a lot that goes into the creation of an instrument. And the older the wood, the better, because it's dried out. You know, if an instrument is made from wood that hasn't completely dried and is still green in some kind of way, after the instrument is put together, it will shrink on itself, you know, because it's drying. And so when it was put together, it was made to fit in a certain way. And then when it shrinks on itself, then you have instruments that the seams keep popping open and whatever. So having good, dry material in the first place to make a wood instrument out of is paramount. Yeah, but quality, geometry, the guy who made my main bass that I play, his name is Luciano Golia, and he is...
So you had a bass specifically designed for you?
Well, no. I actually bought this instrument, and later on we became friends, because he's from Italy. He now lives in the States, because he married a nice American girl, and they live... You know, he can make basses anywhere. But my bass was made in Turin, Italy. And it's made actually of... the top of most string instruments, orchestral strings, is spruce. And typically the bouts and the back are made of maple, curly maple or flame maple. My bass, the bouts and the back are made of what's called Ontano poplar. And Ontano is a region of Italy where these particular trees grow, but they grow by water. They grow by a river. And so normally this type of tree doesn't have a flame to it. It doesn't have a, you know, but because it grows by the water, it does have a little bit of a flame in it. But I remember him telling me the story. He had gone to this neighbor farmer who just had a pile of wood on his property, the old wood that had been sitting there and just drying and curing for, I don't know, maybe 50 years. So it was, you know, well seasoned. And he went to the farmer and said he'd like to buy this wood. And the farmer said, well, what do you want it for? And he said, well, I want to make a bass with it, you know. And the farmer was like, well, wouldn't it be better used in your burner, you know, in your fireplace? And he was like, well, I just want to try, you know. And so he made this bass.
Wow.
So when I was in the market for a new bass, I was in college, and the one that I had been playing, my dad had found on a classified ad, you know. So that's pretty cool, you know, because when I went to college, the first year of college, I didn't play bass. I'm like, I'm going to concentrate.
You was focused on violin?
I was focusing on, I had a scholarship for violin. I'm going to focus on violin. And I went to the jazz concerts, and I would just be sitting back there in the dark crying because I wanted to be doing that.
Wow.
So I told my...
You were crying?
I would cry because I wanted to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had told my folks, I'm like, when I come back to school next year, I need to have my own instrument. And so my dad was on the case. He was on the case, and he got the classifieds and found his bass. So, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
But from after a while you grow out of
Yeah.
the instrument, and I needed a professional quality instrument so that I could continue to really grow as a musician.
So the bass that you have now, is that your baby?
That's my baby. That's the one that's my dance partner.
Yeah.
My
Beautiful.
Yeah, my dance partner.
I'm still searching for mine.
But when you find it, you will find it.
Yeah.
Well, all right, where I grew up, obviously there was not a lot of luthiers in Idaho, and so the nearest place that you could go to get a fine quality instrument that I knew of was in Seattle, Washington. So I had to make a trip there. But they had a website, and they had their inventory. And I had seen the big brother to my bass on their website, and I was like, because dimensionally it's a big bass. It's a little bit non-traditional, and it's the lower bouts are bigger, and it's also deeper back to front. And I was looking at it going, man, based upon just what I'm seeing, that bass has got to sound huge, and that was one of the things I was lacking with my Romanian flatback. It's just like, you'd be playing and all of a sudden, where's the E? Where's the guts? I need the low notes. Anyway, so I call them and I'm like, is this bass still there? Is it still available? And they're like, no, it's not here. It's been sold, but we're expecting another one from the maker, at any point. And I just told them I would buy it, sight unseen.
Really?
It's not even played. I said, just when it gets here,
I want it.
I want it. The end.
And it just happened to be.
And wow. And so, maybe that was in March of 1998, and November of 98. They called me and they're like, the bass is here. Do you want to come get it? I'm like, I'll be there this next week, because I had to plan the trip.
When you got it, how'd you feel?
Well, I had never heard something so beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was going in. They were going to make money off of me one way or another because I was getting a new bass. So if I didn't really love it, I had so many other ones to choose from. I was going to find one.
Gotcha.
And I played a bass that was, I think it might have been close to 150 years old, and it was like over $200,000.
How much?
$200,000. Yeah,
100,000?
with 1, 2, 3, 5 zeros after it. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not in the market for that, but I want to. It's here. I'm going to try it out. For comparison, I'm running a series of tests. Yeah. So I played that instrument. And it was beautiful, and it was very mellow, and it was very. You could tell that it had been. Every caretaker that had it had played it in tune, because that's the thing with wood instruments, especially. There's something about when it's played in tune, the resonance is, it's like the molecules line up in a certain way, and it resonates when it's in tune, So like Stradivarius totally got that with all of his, things.
Yeah.
Anyway, same with Luciano, and he actually is an expert on Stradivarius and the geometry, and he was like, we was kind of geeking out one time and, going on about the geometry of things. And I'm like, well, it totally makes sense. You're optimizing the use of science, which I love science.
Yeah.
And math, to accomplish this goal. So anyway, I play this bajillion-dollar instrument, which was beautiful and everything. And then I pick up this one that I had committed to buy. And it sounded like 10 times bigger. It just sounded absolutely huge. I'd never, it was like I'd go bonk, bonk, there was.
You knew that was the one, right?
Yeah, the moment I played a note, I was like, oh, here you are. So glad you're finally here. So glad you're here. Yeah, so that was it. Yeah.
All right, let's go back. So let's go back to when you first heard jazz. Like, do you remember when I know you say your dad played big band around the house.
Yeah.
But when did jazz first say, wow? Is that the Ray Brown experience?
I would say so because, okay, let's see. When I was singing in the jazz choir, okay, you're going to laugh at this. So, one of the tunes was, of course, Birdland. You know,
Say that again.
Birdland. You know.
Yeah. I remember that.
And I remember playing that on electric, but like not being able to I couldn't see my hand, and so I would like lay it on my lap like this. I mean, totally the wrong technique, and nobody was telling me to do it differently. So I'm like, well, you know. But so Birdland. But then another song that we were singing was an arrangement of Thelonious Monk's Epistrophe for choir.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, exactly. What? Anyway, so me doing my due diligence, I'm like, well, okay, I got to find a recording of what is this song supposed to sound like? Because, you know, doing it in the, I'm like, epistrophe.
Gotcha,
and I'm like,
that was...
this isn't the blues. This, you know, and I didn't know anything. I still feel like I don't know anything, but I really didn't know anything then. And so I remember getting a recording of, like it was a compilation of Thelonious Monk. And I had heard of all blues, so I got a compilation of Miles Davis, all in cassette. And then, you remember back in the day, VH1? Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, MTV and then VH1, and then Ben Sidran would have like this jazz show on there. And I remember seeing Wynton Marsalis live at Blues Alley.
Wow.
You know, that they had done a video as well as like a box set recording of that
I remember
gig.
the recording,
And I was like, oh, they played this tune that I didn't know what it was called, but I just knew that it was on that thing. And so I was looking for Wynton Marsalis too. So I got a cassette of Thelonious Monk, cassette of Miles Davis, like compilations, best of. And then I couldn't afford the box set from Blues Alley, but I could afford Wynton Marsalis Standard Time Volume 1, which the tune, it turns out it was a blues called Soon All Will Know. And I was like, man, that is just the hippest sounding thing I ever heard. I didn't realize it was a blues until way later. Anyway, so those were my three things. So it was Thelonious Monk that got me in there. So, but I didn't, you know, I was listening to it and I didn't get any of it. I was like, okay, well, that's how it's supposed to go. I don't know that we can really make it sound like that, but okay. You know, and you do your best.
So you did when you first heard, did you like it or were you just curious? I mean, was it just...
I did like it. Okay. I liked it very much. I didn't understand it, you know. I mean, you know, it was like I could hear that there was the repetition. I could hear that there was the groove. I could hear sometimes there would just be a flurry of notes, and I'd be like, "Wow, whatever, whatever that is. I don't even know. Whatever that is. That's nice." I have no idea how they did that. But, you know, that galvanizing moment that we talked about was the Ray Brown Trio, where I was like, that completely, you know, I had my cassette tapes from, you know, high school, but then...
So would you say Ray Brown is the bassist that had the biggest influence on you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, without question. Yeah. I mean, and from that, I mean, the great thing, you know, with jazz, you know, as you know, it is very much an oral tradition, you know, and... to get a good jazz concept, you have to listen to the people who created it. There's no shortcuts. You're not going to get it off the page. The page, you know, the fake book, that's very limited information. That's there's the music is not there. You know, the music is here, and you know, just like when you're a baby and you're growing up and you're learning to speak English, you're repeating your parents.
Exactly.
You know, so.
So did you do any transcribing?
I did. But I didn't do a lot of writing it down. It was mostly like just trying to figure out.
Would you transcribe the bass lines or the solos?
Yeah, the bass lines.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't know how to string it together. And for whatever reason, any teacher that I had...
That's why you grew so hard.
Yeah, well,
because you got it right. You went right to the source.
Yeah, figure it out. You know, and still today, you know, there's some things I know that I'm like, I totally stole this. And I'm doing it anyway. Because it's just that good. You know, so this is, I might not have said it this way if I were choosing, but I'm saying it this way because I'm quoting, because this is how it goes. You know, this is what the language is. This is how you string these words together to create a sentence, you know.
So as a bass player, you're required to learn a lot of songs.
Yes, you are.
Now, do you learn the records? How do you learn your songs? I mean, how do you know what songs I'm going to learn? Or
that's a really great question. Okay, so I did a lot. I mean, and it was kind of just maybe serendipitous in a way because I just liked the music. I liked listening to it, you know. So it didn't seem like work. Okay, I got to learn this song. You know, I'd be like, I have, you know, the cooking or the steaming or the whatever Miles Davis quintet. You just put that on. I would listen to it, you know. And so I heard songs like Four, or I heard songs like Surrey with a Fringe on Top, or you know, and things like that. I heard them, so I knew how they went, even though I had never played them, and I'd never seen the sheet music for them or the lead sheet, you know. But I knew how they went. I could sing the root movement, you know. I knew how it went. I knew what the form was because I had heard it so much. So fast forward to playing on, you know, jam sessions and eventually playing on gigs, you know, someone would say, well, do you know thus and so tune? And with all honesty, I could say yes and no. I mean, yes, I know it because I know how it goes, but I've never played it.
Wow.
You know,
and you would play the right notes?
Well, not the first time. But I'm a pretty quick learner.
Yeah, I got you.
You know, I'd be like, no, that's not the right thing. It sounds like this. You know, you know what we were talking about, perfect pitch versus relative. I have really good relative pitch because of that.
So you would learn songs on at the session, or
but I would learn them, you know, in practice. I guess at that point, because I'd be playing the bass, I'd have to. You know, I'd have to be playing the foundation. And again, we talked about if the foundation is shaky, other things, you know, but I had a pretty good groove. So even if I wasn't always playing the right notes, you know, the groove was still pretty solid. But it came from just listening. I loved listening to the music so much, you know.
And you never studied with anyone, like bass at any point?
No.
So how do you know if you got the bass right technique or something? I mean,
well, okay, so this is a thing, right? So many, I mean, you play the saxophone. It's not like you're like changing up where you put your fingers on the buttons, or on the keys. It's like, no, this is where they go because this is, if I don't have my hands here, that note's not going to be accessible. Whereas with a string instrument, you know, you can look at it and be like, where are the notes? You know, it's very ambiguous, you know. So there are certain ways, yes, like general ways of good technique, and a lot of it's posture oriented. Same, I'm sure, with playing the saxophone. You know, your posture is going to dictate how full you can get your lungs. You know, your posture is going to dictate whether or not you have, you know, fluid movement. You know, if you have access to all of everything by your posture. So I had, good violin teachers that really plowed that home about having good posture, good technique, you know, being comfortable, making sure you're, you know, if you're tense, you know, why are you tense? And usually it's because you're not concentrating on that. You're trying to like learn something. But to pay attention to how you're feeling in your body, because playing bass, especially if you're playing something that's up tempo.
That's what I was going to say. You know, when you know, I've seen bass players on like jam sessions. It's like 4 or 5 saxophonists, and they playing Cherokee.
They are burning down the house of
like,
Cherokee.
You have to. How do you use little muscles versus big muscles?
Yeah.
Do you learn those things along the way?
Well, hopefully, because if you don't, then you end up with tendonitis and you can't play, or you know, other kinds of, you know, the body is always wanting to find the path of least resistance.
Gotcha.
Right. Honestly, you know, we are lazy at heart. Let's just admit it. You know, but we're trying to find. But the thing is, laziness doesn't necessarily mean economy. You know, and so with playing bass, especially, and you know, the faster the tempo is, the greater importance it is to transfer the energy. Right. So like if you're playing a kind of a medium, you know, slow blues where you're really digging in, you know, you can really use the weight of the arm to get, you know, and I always like to say, you know, with any quarter note, imagine that you're bouncing a ball, you know, bouncing a basketball and having this elasticity in the quarter note. when the ball hits the ground, that's when you pull the note, and then as the ball comes back up into your hand, you push it back down, right? So you get this elasticity. You can get that at any tempo. However, when the tempo starts getting faster and faster and faster, you have to have less, less, kinetic energy here, and it has to just become more economical. Yeah. So one of the ways that I do this, and this is something that I just figured out for me personally, and maybe it'll help somebody else too, whether it's bass or any other instrument, that you don't have to breathe to make it happen. Yes. But I found that the faster the tempo became, the slower and deeper I would breathe. Wow. So like I was doing this yin yang thing maybe, like the faster and more energy that was being expended here.
Really?
Just slow, deep breaths, because that also helped keep everything relaxed.
Wow.
Just being very intentional about that, trying to balance that energy.
It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that would work for saxophone, because you're like, woo! I don't know how that works, but
it's actually relaxing.
Yeah.
Like, so that, and you
don't have to play every measure. You can take a measure and just take a, you take a breath. Okay, now I'm back in it. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about synergy. We're moving right along.
Okay.
Let's talk about synergy.
All right.
Okay. As part of the rhythm section, there's a certain synthesis of energy that takes place between the bassist, the drummer, and the pianist.
Yes, there is.
Synergy. Okay. Is that synergy different depending on the different musicians you play with?
100%.
Yes.
Yeah,
wow.
100%.
So who you play with can affect the way
everything. Yeah. However, I mean, I'm very lucky because I've been fortunate enough to really be able to surround myself with who I call my tribe. I got my tribe, both on and off the bandstand. And I think that is a real key, like when you really enjoy someone's company off the bandstand, it just makes what happens on the bandstand even more rich and deeper and, more humor filled, because I mean, no doubt. I love to laugh. I love being funny, and I love being silly, and I love it when people join me in any kind of shenanigans. We're in. So having that that synergy. I mean, I play with two of the best, most incredible musicians in the world, who happen to also be women. Jackie Warren on piano and Sherry Miracle on drums, with 3D Jazz Trio. Just an example. We'd be playing along, and Jackie and I would play the exact same thing. Like I would feel like, okay, I want to fill this spot, and we would play the exact same notes, and we would just look at each other and just start laughing, because it was like, really, and it's and she would say, "Get out of my brain! No, stay in my brain! Stay in there, and having that synergy, and of course, we goof off considerably off the bandstand. But
and speaking of synergy. I would dare say that you probably play in many situations where you're the only woman and you're playing with a bunch of dudes.
Yes, I have.
And so
that's true.
Yeah. I don't want to assume anything.
No, that's true.
But I was thinking about that. I'm saying, I don't know if I've ever been in a situation where I'm like
the only guy. Yeah, because that probably wouldn't.
I'd be like, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
And so
you have to come and play with 3D.
Yeah.
We swung Paul Carr around. It's about time for Tony P to swing you around.
That might be scary.
You'll like it.
Would y'all be easy on me?
You like it. You like it. Okay, so see, here's the thing. So I love men. I love men musicians. I love what they bring. I love women musicians. I love what they bring, but it is a different energy.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, it is a different energy.
What's the difference, or how can you explain that? And maybe it's hard to put in words, but like when you have the all women thing, and then playing with the guys.
Okay, well, I mean, I should maybe preface this with, when a musician, regardless of gender, or race or anything, when they are just delicious musicians.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get on the bandstand thinking about, oh wow,
No doubt.
you don't. That's not even a consideration.
Yeah,
It's all about, okay, what are we've come
Yeah.
together to create this other thing
yeah.
that is incredibly beautiful and
Yeah,
have this
no doubt.
experience, and so that's really not. When you're in it, it's not a consideration.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't care if you can play. Let's do it. Now. With that said, yes, there has been prejudgment. You look at me and you're like, that's not what jazz looks like. And I'm like, even with the glasses?
Yeah.
But, and especially Sherry and Jackie.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. We know. We're middle-aged white women. We know what we look like. We know. We already know. I mean, it was so funny. We rolled up to this one place where we were going to play a gig. And we had to go through a checkpoint, and there was a woman security guard. She comes out, and we're like, oh, yeah, we're here with the band. We're playing. And she's like, oh, y'all the singers? And we're like, I mean, we just started laughing because,
funny.
it's an assumption. Oh, well, there's no way that you're the bass player or the drummer. There's no way. But then it's like if you didn't see us and you just listened to us, you wouldn't. It would not even be a consideration. Be just like, well, that's really good. I like that. That makes me feel good in my heart. So getting back to your other question with the energy, and the thing is, I experienced this with men too. With this synergy. I mean, I've worked for, getting close to almost 2 decades with great drummer Frank Russo, and Frank and I have that simpatico too, where it's like, when you play with somebody for so many gigs, so many hours, when you log that
it's
time,
like breathing.
It's breathing, but you develop what I call it. It's a trust. I trust that if I go off the rails, that he's got my back.
Gotcha.
Same with Jackie and Sherry. If I go off the rails, I trust that they're gonna, help me get right back on track as soon as possible. So there's that trust that gets built up, but. A lot of times with the energy of things, there's an ego thing, and I'm not saying that women don't have egos, because of course we all do. We all struggle with that, if we're honest. But there's a thing that I think it's just maybe because we're feminine, we're the goddesses, we're the caregivers, we're the whatever, whatever you want to say, and the men are the warriors that, and you want to be typecast or whatever. But and not that women can't be warriors and that men can't be caregivers. You know what I'm saying, because you can, and there's so many that fulfill both sides of that. And I would say that in my tribe, especially the men that are in my tribe, they are very in touch with. Their feminine aspect. Not that they're weak, because being feminine doesn't mean being weak. We know that. I mean, childbirth. Hello.
Exactly.
Not, and I haven't even done it because I'm a chicken. Anyway. So the energy. I remember for the longest time I avoided all women ensembles. For the longest time. Now, and that's funny now, right? And the reason is that so often it was treated as kind of like a dog and pony show. Gotcha. It would be like, oh, well, we're going to celebrate women in jazz. And I'm like, well, that's admirable. However...
Kind of pandering, you think?
Pandering, but what would happen is there would be 2 or 3 of us that were really playing and had been playing, and in order to flush out the group with, we needed a drummer, we needed, there would be somebody, they would just get someone who had the right plumbing, to be on that instrument, and not someone who had dedicated their life to this is what I'm doing. And it made the music suffer.
Gotcha.
Because, and then it would make me irritated because I'm like, this is not representative of me or what I want to put out there, because this is, we're not able to get to that simpatico or that synergy, because this person, even though they're a lovely person and I'm not going to be a jerk to them, they should not be up here.
Gotcha.
And that maybe sounds a little bit harsh.
No,
but,
I understand what you're saying.
So if you're going to be celebrating all women, let's not have it be just like all. Let's not have it be that. Let's just be.
The standard should be.
Let's just celebrate jazz. Let's just celebrate
the
the music. If you can play, great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That said, I avoided it for that reason because I'm like, I don't want to be lumped in. I want to be considered someone who can hang with anybody. That was my goal. And the other thing about that was I and even now, if it doesn't happen very often, it did earlier on, as you're building your career and making connections, I would get a call for a gig, and, you would maybe get the call and be like, 10 minutes later, and you call back and they already got somebody else on the gig. And it's like, okay, well, they didn't want me. They wanted a warm body. They needed somebody on bass. It didn't matter that it was me. I was like, you know what? Nope, that's not how I'm going to do my career. You call me because you want me specifically, what I bring, So speaking to that energy.
Yeah.
So fast forward to when I started playing with Sherry Miracle behind the great Maurice Hines for his show Tappin' Through Life. And Sherry and Maurice had a similar manager in common. So Sherry's runs the Diva Jazz Orchestra, all women big band out of New York, like one of the best big bands still, around anywhere. Yeah. And all women, and she's kind of made it her goal to really showcase and bring, these amazing women musicians into, visibility.
Yeah.
So in his show, he was like, I have to have my divas for my band, And so it was a smaller version of the Diva Jazz Orchestra, a 10-piece orchestra. And all women, of course. And I remember, and I played when it opened at Arena Stage, and then it ended up touring regional theaters, and then eventually we ended up in New York at New World Stages off Broadway. And I remember coming into the dressing room one night, and I'm surrounded by, really not just the best women musicians, but some of the best musicians anywhere.
Wow. Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And we're all like, oh, well, did you try this mascara? Well, did you can get a coupon for the whatever it was, and just talking but being like everyone who's a complete badass, but then there was this crazy nurturing thing, like, oh, I brought cookies, and that kind of thing where there was just like this incredible loving support where everyone, and it would be the same experience as if I were on the bandstand with all men, and you'd be shouting out when somebody just played something insanely great, and that would still be happening. It would be like, wow, whatever it was, and just being super excited about what you're hearing. But then, in the dressing room, we're like, oh, I like this lipstick. Try this one. Yeah. And just being, very like nurturing. Oh, you need another pair of hose. You got socks. I got some. Just a minute. Whatever it was. Helping each other do each other's hair or whatever.
It's like a sisterhood type of thing.
Yeah, it's a sisterhood, but it like the energy was so warm and nurturing, and it's a room full of goddesses. What can I say? What? Yeah,
and then you all get out there and kick butt.
Yeah, and it's just like, if you didn't see us, you wouldn't think, wow, that's a nice group of women. You wouldn't think that. You're just like, holy cow, that's so swinging. That's hot. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But I have really great energy, obviously, with men musicians.
Yeah.
It is different though.
Yeah,
it's different
because it's like, I guess, hanging with the guys, we talk some.
You do,
we
Yeah, you got your thing. Yeah,
and I get the girls got their way, and so
yeah,
yes.
And there's things that overlap. Sure, yeah.
All right. So how did the 3D jazz trio come together? How did?
Well,
Yes.
Okay, Sherry and I had never like played together, and I tease her about this because when I was in college at the Jazz Festival, Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, the Diva Jazz Orchestra had come and played that jazz festival a couple of times, and I just I was they were amazing, just an amazing big band. And I remember sending an email to the manager or to Diva saying, do you ever have bass auditions? Because I would really like to audition. I never heard back. Never heard back. I was totally blown off, no. And I tease her about that now. So, fast forward to many, many, many years later. And Sherry and I were both teaching at a jazz camp together, and as faculty. And of course, the faculty would demonstrate for, we'd be playing a gig, a faculty gig. And from note one, we were like, oh, hello, that's really swinging, that's great. But after that, we never played again for a couple of years. Well, then all of a sudden, she's the musical director for Maurice Hines, and he's doing this show. And she, with different regional theaters, some could afford the band to come in its entirety. Some could only afford key players, and you'd have to pick up people in that locale. Right. Now, a number of like regular diva big band musicians happen to live in the D.C. area. Lee Pilzer, Barry sax, Liesl Whitaker, lead trombone, Jennifer Krupa on trombone. So there's a number that are in this area. So of course they were all on this gig, and Sherry, I think, had asked Lee, well, do you think Amy would want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, yes. 100%. Yes. So that's how that started. So I was playing with the band there, and the show ended up going to Cleveland, Ohio, to the Cleveland Playhouse. And so again, not all of the positions or all the chairs were going to be funded, so we had to pick up some people, and everyone in town was like, you have to call Jackie Warren, a piano player, because we needed a piano player. You got to call Jackie Warren. And we always tease her, and Sherry always teases her from the stage, because she's like, okay, I'll call Jackie Warren. And she's like, I called, I left messages, and she never called me back. And which is, a joke. But the thing is, Jackie Warren, she's the workingest woman in the world. She was already doing like 5 gigs a day as it was, But she ended up agreeing to do the show. She would do the show and then go to a gig afterwards. I'm not even kidding, So we'd go, crash her gigs. But so we get to rehearsal, and Sherry's not even playing. She's conducting at this point and just, rehearsing the band, because we have all these pickup musicians in there. And I'm standing next to Jackie. We just meet, and then we start playing, and we were both like, oh, and it was like immediate, where you're like, I know you, okay. So what ended up happening, what had happened was, we just, the three of us enjoyed playing together so much that we would come to the theater early before the show.
Really? Wow.
To just play. Wow. And then we had 2 great tap dancers that were in the show, John and Leo Manzari, and they'd be warming up too. So we'd be like, well, let's jam together, And of course, since then we've done some shows with just the 2 of them, and a lot with John. We love having John dance with us, because he spends the time to learn song forms and learn bebop heads and tap to them, choreograph. Really? He's so good. Wow. Anyway, but we started playing together, but we were just in the show, but then, that run would end, and then, we wait for the next run to come up, and we're like, we really just love playing together so much. We should be a band. We already are a band, but we should do a thing, because in that time, we were developing our repertoire, together, and just having a gas doing it, I mean, how lucky am I, to have that experience, to play with not only the iconic Maurice Hines, but to play with Sherry and Jackie every day and sometimes twice, and I'll start crying if I talk about it too much. So let's just move on here. But it's just I feel so
and then
much
y'all
gratitude.
recorded? I mean, yeah. Y'all did what?
We have 3 albums out now.
Wow.
The first one we did as a broadcast for WVIA Studios up in Scranton, which is it's a PBS affiliate, and we were doing their homegrown concert series.
Okay.
And but if we liked it, then we could release it as an album, and we ended up liking it, and we released it as an album. So that was our first album, just 3 Divas. Since then, we kind of reduced our name to 3D Jazz Trio because it was a cool idea to say the number 3 in Divas and have it look like one word.
Yeah.
But nobody ever got it right, and you'd be on stage and trying to explain, well, it's 3, number 3, and then the Divas is, it's like, we got to simplify this.
Yeah.
We got to simplify our brand, and so it's just 3D, and the people know the D stands for Divas, but it's 3D. Yeah.
And you are in a variety of different groups. You got and we're gonna go through the Sherbert-Shire.
The Sholbert-Shires.
Sholbert-Shire. Now, give us a brief synopsis of that.
Okay. All right. So, for me, it means the world to me to play in an ensemble that is a band.
Yeah.
Where it's like, Sherry's on the drums, Jackie's on the piano. The 3D Jazz Trio is the 3 of us. You take one of us out, it's no longer that anymore. It's the Sherry Miracle Trio or the Amy Shook Trio, whatever, right? So I love playing in a band where this is the band.
Gotcha.
Like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
That's the band.
No doubt.
Right? Not that we're the Stones, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So same thing with the Sholbert-Shires.
Okay.
So, and that name is an amalgamation of all of our last names. So Shook.
Yeah.
Holt,
Yeah.
Scholl,
Yeah.
and then Bert for Silbert.
Yeah.
Shires is Abshire. So it's, myself, Amy Shook, Joe Holt on piano, Scott Silbert on saxophone, and Steve Abshire on guitar.
Oh, wow.
But we're like, well, we have a family band.
Yeah.
The Sholbert-Shires. So that's what that is.
Then you got the Shook Russo Fortet.
That's right.
Fortet? Is that the Fortet?
The Fortet.
The Fortet, okay.
Yeah, the Fortet, and that's with Frank Russo, who I've played with, like I said, in for almost 20 years, in a variety. We've been a core rhythm section for a variety of bands over the years, but we always enjoyed just like, well, let's play original music written for this ensemble. So that and my husband plays tenor sax, and we have a great guitar player named Jonathan Epley.
Wow.
And that particular ensemble, our focus is writing music for us to play, whereas Sholbert-Shires, it was born out of doing a tribute concert to the Oscar Peterson Trio plus Stan Getz. So that's how that started. But then we're like, well, we have fun playing together. We need to be a band, and so then it kind of has become, what that is.
Now, speaking of composing, you're a composer and arranger. How long have you been doing that? What has that been like for you?
Well,
I just want to touch on it.
You want to touch on it? Well, I've always, I think because I played violin, I had a very distinct advantage of melody.
No, yeah.
Whereas if I had just been playing bass, it would have been a different orientation. That said, because I played and play both, a lot of times when I'm writing something, I will have a concept of melody with that bass, like both will come at the same time.
Yeah.
Not that I'm writing out a specific bass line every time, but sometimes I am. Sometimes I hear specific, things that correlate. And I'm still, there's so many people who just write fantastically for large ensemble. Scott Silbert, of course, Lee Pilzer, Sherry Miracle does. So many of my genius friends do it. So I'm going to probably farm things out to all y'all. but I'm really good at doing small group kinds of things. And writing.
You enjoy writing?
Yeah, I do. I like. Okay, well, how can I? A lot of times with writing, I would be giving myself an assignment for example.
Yeah.
Like, so one time, like, I was trying to understand, like, the sus flat 9 chord, dominant sus flat 9. And, I'm like, okay, well, in order to really kind of understand how this harmony should sound, I need to just see if I can write a song where I really intentionally use this sound. And so, so I would give myself little assignments like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was talking to Bob Booty. I had a group. What was that group called?
The Fab Trio.
The Fab Trio.
Frank, Amy, and Bob. Again with the amalgamation, the amalgamation of last or first names in that case. Again, with that band, it wasn't going to be anything else if one of us wasn't there.
Gotcha.
And we had a steady Friday, Saturday night gig for like almost 2 years, maybe.
Wow.
So
you pretty much stay busy.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've been very, very thankful.
I'm just going to read some of the people you performed with: Maurice Hines, and Sherry. Is that Sherry?
Sherry Miracle, probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Diva Jazz Orchestra. Lionel Hampton. Larry Willis. Greg Gisbert. George Masterhazy.
Mr. Hazy. Yeah.
Mr. Hazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Russell Anderson.
Yeah.
Wow. Allie Riverson.
Allie Ryerson. Yeah.
Ryerson. Okay.
Yeah.
You need with the name.
I know there's a lot of names, man.
Walt
Weisskopf,
Weisskopf.
who you heard the other night here at Blue
Yeah.
House. Yeah.
Oh, y'all was killing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My man Tim Warfield.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love Tim too because man, he talk about a dresser.
Yes.
Come, what's he gonna be wearing next? What's he gonna wear, man? Yeah.
Wow. Wycliffe Gordon.
Yeah.
The Smithsonian Jazz Master.
Yes.
And we did the tour.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah. That was, yes. We had a lot of Hubert Laws and Kirk Elling, Steve Nelson, Lewis Nat. Wow. So you're doing all right.
I have no complaints. No complaints, man.
And you've done all the festivals: the Washington Women, the Jazz Festival, the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, the Mid Atlantic Jazz Festival, Cape May. So you playing all over the place.
I'm trying.
So what does it feel like to be Amy Shook?
Now you know.
Oh man.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah. So this has your music. It has been a great ride for you.
Oh man, yeah, I'm still riding.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Yeah.
All right, we got some final questions. We coming down to the end. We learned a lot about you though.
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah.
you mentioned that you didn't have any. You don't have any kids.
No.
You didn't ever want any kids. Oh, I guess the butterflies and the cats.
I have different children.
Yes.
Well, it was one of those things that it was never, for me, it was never a real burning desire. I think I would have been a good mom, because I
think so.
I'm pretty caring and attentive, but it was, and there's so many women who are both mothers and doing a career.
Yeah.
And some of them that I know, it has been really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to have a career, and it's also hard to be a full-time, really invested and engaged parent. Now try to do both of those things,
Makes sense.
And it was one of those things that it wasn't that I was like, no, I don't want kids. Nothing like that. Because I do have some girlfriends that were like, oh man, I would no. I mean, I do have some friends like that. But for me, it was like, if it happened, it would have been okay. But I would have been really scared. Probably. Gotcha. I guess that's probably natural too, right? Yeah. That's normal. But,
all right.
Yeah.
What is it like being married to a saxophonist?
What? There's saxophones everywhere. There's mouthpieces everywhere. And there's reeds.
Yeah.
They're just, it's everywhere. It's like part of our decor.
Yes.
No, I'm teasing.
Pat Shook.
Pat Shook,
Yeah.
Yep.
What's up, Pat? Give Pat some love, man.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, that for me, I always knew that I was going to have to be married to, if I had a partner, it was going to have to be a musician and a good musician.
Yeah.
I mean,
He can't be no scrub, huh?
No, I mean, because, you don't want to be like, when he would get a gig, if we would both be on a gig, you didn't want it to be like, well, he got the gig, but his wife's on the gig because it's his wife. And the other way around too. So, well, not only that, but just to, there's, with music, as you know, it's such, it's not just something that you do as a hobby. I mean, for some, it is, but it's not just a hobby.
Yeah, no.
For me, it's like it's DNA. And if there was at any point an expectation of, oh, she'll grow up and get a real job, it's like. No, that's not how this works. Because this is part of me. It's like saying, okay, well, we're done with your right arm. You no, I can't. So I had to have a partner that got that. And so yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Couple more questions.
Uh-oh.
What's next for Amy Shook?
Well, probably going to go get some coffee when we're done. You want to join me? We can continue this off camera, off the record. Yeah.
You funny.
Well, what's the big thing that's kind of next is Scott Silbert's project. That's coming out very soon, so that's kind of been a thing on my plate. Very thankfully, because it's fantastic, and I'm really proud of it and proud of him and what all the musicians did, especially after not playing for a year and a half or whatever it was. And then 3D, we do have a bunch of tunes already lined up for the next recording.
Gotcha.
We've released 2 albums in 2020. I mean,
wow.
That's nice because we were able to share some bright spots in a really dark year, but we weren't able to tour with either album.
Wow.
So one album we released in, I think it was May of 2020, and then the other one was a holiday album, a Christmas album. And it's time for us to do another one, and we have a couple. I mean, we always like to do songs that aren't necessarily in the traditional jazz canon. And so like on the very first album, we did a John Denver tune, and we did a Sonny and Cher tune, and on this, let's see, what did we do on this last one that was non-traditional? I don't remember what we did. But then with the Christmas album, we did the folks, John and Kathy Avini, who were our producers. Kathy was like, well, I want another John Denver song, because she loved John Denver and she loved our version of Sunshine on My Shoulders. And so she wanted, and we're like, well, is there a John Denver Christmas song? And the one that we chose was Please Daddy Don't Get Drunk This Christmas.
Wow, okay.
But I play fiddle on it.
Really?
So I'm just throwing that out there. If you want to you want to hear some me playing at the fiddle. Now there's some really tremendous country fiddle players, and I don't even pretend to be on that level.
Great job.
But I got to get those chops together because I know they want to do more of that. So I got to get that together. But
cool.
So, but along that lines, we got some Dolly Parton coming up on the next one.
Oh wow.
We love Dolly. Another powerhouse of a woman. That's great songwriter.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Last question. How can people contact you?
Well,
Learn more about what you're doing. You can look right in the camera and let them know.
All right. Well, my name, Amy Shook, AMYSHOOK.com. That's the easiest way because you can just email me, amy@amyshook.com. Super easy.
Yes.
I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram, although I admit to not being on it very consistently. And so if you message me on Facebook, please, I beg your forgiveness if it takes me a year and a half to get back to you, which has happened before, because sometimes Facebook will filter your messages, and you go look in this archive folder, and there's like someone asking me about a gig from a year and a half ago, and I'm like, I am so sorry. I would never not get back to you. So
that happens.
You know,
I tell people, text, you know, because people leave messages on my phone.
Yeah,
I say, make sure you text a message.
You'll see it if text or email. And the other way is actually through 3D, you know, 3djazztrio.com, and you can also type in 3 Divas Jazz Trio, but 3djazztrio.com, and we're on, I'd say, more social media. I'm more engaged with that than I am just me, you know. But you could reach me. You could find, I'm everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere, nowhere. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we'll see you on the next one.
Yay.